one of the most aggressive steps yet to limit legal immigration.
Thanks to a proposal from President Donald Trump to expand a policy known as public charge. It's an idea that's been ingrained in U.S. immigration policy for over 100 years. Immigrants seeking to come to the U.S. or seeking citizenship who are deemed unable to support themselves financially are considered a public charge and denied a visa or green card.
And President Trump has once again delivered on his promise to the American people to enforce long-standing immigration law. Today, USCIS, the agency I head as part of the Department of Homeland Security, has issued a rule that encourages and ensures self-reliance and self-sufficiency for those seeking to come to or to stay in the United States. It will also help promote immigrants' success in the United States as they seek opportunity here.
Obviously, USCIS should treat everybody fairly and should treat everybody the same. Now, they certainly don't, and I think there's certain officers who come after people for just being poor.
I think there's just a lot of fear and concern, so people just kind of stay away from any public program for fear that it could at some point affect their immigration status.
We were just drowning in phone calls of people scared, is my husband going to be deported because my son is taking Medicaid, or my child has Down syndrome and we accept state benefits, but my husband's undocumented. Is that going to, affect our case going forward?
The Department of Homeland Security made the proposal public in October of 2018. It hasn't been finalized yet, but experts warn that the proposal has already sparked a chilling effect that is leading many immigrants to avoid all public benefits, even health insurance. And early signs back up those fears. New enrollment for healthcare through Covered California, the state's public insurance marketplace, dropped by 23.8% in 2019. Officials said consumers who did not speak English as their first language experienced a larger overall decline in enrollment than those who did speak English primarily. In another survey, 40% of uninsured people in California responded that they were very worried or somewhat worried that signing up for health insurance would draw attention to their immigration status. In fact, experts say public charge may have helped fuel a notable nationwide drop in new signups for Obamacare through healthcare.gov, which fell more than 15 points this year.
Sorry.
Critics are saying this policy is unfairly targeting the lower income immigrants. How do you respond to that?
Well, we certainly expect people of any income to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And so if people are not able to be self-sufficient, then this negative factor is going to bear very heavily against them in a decision about whether they'll be able to become a legal permanent resident. And a poor person can be prepared to be self-sufficient. Many have been through the history of this country. So let's not look at that as the be-all and end-all. It's not the deciding factor, which is why we continue to use the totality of circumstances.
Whether USCIS treats poor people differently than they do affluent people or people of means. And in the last couple years, I've definitely seen a trend to making life harder for poor people at immigration.
This is a 140-year-old legal structure. We're dealing with the most recent iteration of it, but this is not new. This was the same question might have been asked when my Italian immigrants were coming, immigrant ancestors were coming, and all through that 140 years. So we're not doing anything new here. We're simply making effective what Congress had already put on the books. So there's no reason for any particular group to feel like this is
There's just a lot of fear and
them.
concern, so people just kind of stay away from any public program for fear that it could at some point affect their immigration status.
Since the 1800s, federal laws have required foreign nationals to be able to care for themselves without being a public charge. As such, it is incumbent upon the U.S. government to evaluate applications in a manner consistent with federal law, and I believe the public charge regulation is a necessary step to achieving that. To determine who is a public charge, officials will look at things like an applicant's health, finances, and which public benefits they are using or are likely to use. The factors that the U.S. government look at when determining who's a public charge have changed over the years, and the current definition is very narrow. But now the Trump administration wants to broadly expand the list of public programs that could become a mark against immigrants applying for a visa or green card, including healthcare programs like Medicaid.
Once this rule is implemented and effective on October 15th, USCIS Career Immigration Services officers, what we call ISOs, will generally consider an alien's current and past receipt of the designated public benefits while in the United States as a negative factor when examining applications. However, receipt of certain non-cash benefits received before October 15th will not be considered as a negative factor. Public benefits are defined as federal, state, and local, as well as tribal, cash assistance for income maintenance and a small list of non-cash benefits. Some examples of the public benefits that are part of the rule are general assistance, SSI, SNAP, most forms of Medicaid, and certain subsidized housing programs.
The country needs a president who will unite us. All Trump wants to do is attack Latino and immigrant communities. This administration's appetite for cruelty is insatiable, and this new policy is just the latest escalation of Trump's anti-immigrant.
First of all, everybody who comes to a new country usually doesn't start at the very top. And I don't know that the representative would want suddenly everybody who comes to the United States to be wealthy enough to become, you know, the bosses of all the companies and take all the high-paying jobs and take no low-paying jobs.
Can we just stay on that for a minute? Isn't she on to something? That essentially what the message of this is, it's sort of the S-hole countries versus the Norwegians, the quote of Donald Trump. Wealthier, more likely to be white immigrants, probably won't need benefits. Immigrants from countries who are people of color, likely lower income, are the ones who this is going to nail. I mean, so there is that kind of element too. That essentially what the message of this is, it's sort of the S-hole countries versus the Norwegians, the quote of Donald Trump. Wealthier, more likely to be white immigrants, probably won't need benefits. Immigrants from countries who are people of color, likely lower income, are the ones who this is going to nail. I mean, so there is that kind of element too, no?
So, you know, it talks about the federal poverty guidelines, and we want people to come. You don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to make, you know, $1 million to come here. That's not what these guidelines do, and that's not what they're for.
But you have to be wealthier.
And that's not what they're
but
for.
You have to be wealthier.
You have to be wealthier than the people of Taunton, Representative.
That's not true.
If you do not make 250% of the federal poverty line, which for a family of four is $63,000, that starts to be counted against you.
Why isn't the existing limitation, why isn't that enough? Why do we have to include, and by the way, that existing limitation did not include food stamps, did not include critical things like health benefits. Why not leave it where it was?
Because we know that too many people are coming here and accessing benefits. And when
Worked
you
for
come
135
here,
years.
Well, does it work? Because look at all the money that we're spending on public assistance programs. Look at the people here that are suffering. Like I said, our mental health problem, the opiate addiction, we need more money for education. All these things.
Representative, would it be better if all these people simply didn't come and didn't pay taxes and didn't work in our economy, fueling our economy?
This doesn't affect people who have green cards, who are paying their taxes, who are not accessing benefits. Even if you have a green card and you are accessing benefits, it doesn't affect you. We're talking going forward. We cannot just have have people coming into the country continually who are going to be on the welfare.
This is about people have bad things happen in their lives or have periods where they have a need. And we are saying, if we think that there is a possibility that at some point you might have that happen in your life, we don't want you in this country.
No, because
and that's an enormous amount.
It takes into account.
Yes, that is what
circumstances like that. It takes in.
If you're 61 years old, if you're older than 61 years old, that could be used against you.
It takes into, and there's plenty of people that can still come under other protected status if you're a victim of violence, plenty of those things. And we have, I think, 81 public assistance programs in this country, and we are only looking at, I think, 7 or 9.
This is an incredibly absurd rule that they're trying to set up. They're trying to set up these incredible standards that your parents would probably not have qualified, my parents probably wouldn't have qualified, your probably wouldn't. Do we want an America that is only for the wealthy and the white?
Care. The point of this study was to simulate how the rule change might affect kids at risk for losing benefits from Medicaid, CHIP, or SNAP, which you think of as food stamps. The authors used nationally representative data from the Medical Expenditure Panel Survey to estimate how many kids might be at risk because they live with a non-citizen adult.
Significantly, the rule does not consider many forms of government assistance that protect children and pregnant women's health as public benefits. Generally, this includes emergency medical assistance, disaster relief, national school lunch programs, WIC, CHIP, Medicaid received by people under the age of 21 or pregnant women, as well as foster care and adoption subsidies, student and mortgage loans, energy assistance, food pantries, homeless shelters, and Head Start.
More than 8 million kids who are currently enrolled in Medicaid, CHIP, or SNAP are at risk of disenrollment. 5.5 million of those kids have specific medical needs. More than 615,000 of them have asthma. More than 53,000 have epilepsy. More than 3,600 have cancer, and more than 580,000 have disabilities. Based on history, for instance, how many kids disenrolled when similar stuff was going on after 1996 welfare reform, it's expected that somewhere between 0.8 million and 1.9 million children with specific medical needs are likely to be disenrolled.